You're either a farmer, a hunter, or a forager. What is your archetype? I'm quasi off the grid this weekend, somewhere in the countryside gathering wild herbs and edible flowers. And we're going to talk about the archetypes and what all this means. But ask yourself, what is your archetype? My name is Mark Bernat. I'm a monetary economist. In this video, I want to talk about the Pope. Unfortunately, Pope Francis has passed. And we're going to talk about his rapport or his geopolitics with Ukraine. But more important at this juncture, what is the next step? What is the next Pope's position on Ukraine and Russia and geopolitics in the world? I want to clarify a few things. First, I often say I'm a secular humanist, corrosive skeptic, and yet I'm also Catholic. How do I reconcile the two? Because there's a German word, I'll spell it, A-U-F-H-E-B-U-N-G, I believe. A-U-F-H-E-B-U-N-G. It's a triple sense Hegelian word, which means to abolish, to preserve, and to lift up to a higher order simultaneously. And that's how you can be a person of faith and yet also be a person of humanity. They don't cancel each other out in the same way you think. Or at least people who have cartoon-like criticisms of religion think. You can be both, and it actually elevates you because, as Hegel taught us, there's a complex stratification of reality. So with regards to some factual information, as a Catholic, I want to put it out there. Anybody can be the next Pope who's a baptized male Catholic in good standing. I could be, and I'm not a priest. I wouldn't want to be, but that's the rule. That's the only rule. Traditionally, it's taken from cardinals and a kind of a bureaucratic aspect to it because we have these elections and contenders and people from the outside. But anybody can be the Pope in the Catholic Church. Second thing is, the Pope is fallible. Okay, I'm a Catholic. He's infallible with the doctrines or the ideals of the Church. Just as Protestants may believe that the Bible is the inspired or literal word of God. Similarly, I am Christ turned to Peter and said, "You are the rock." Peter was a very fallible person. Watch The Chosen. You'll see a lot of his humanity coming out. And that's what I'm talking. This cross between humanity and faith, it's not as critics and cynics with cartoon-like pebbles they're throwing at religion. It's something much more complex. The Pope, if he plays chess, he can lose. He can make inaccuracies. It's okay. He can take a geopolitical stance and be wrong about it because that's not the doctrine of infallibility. His doctrine of infallibility is about the doctrine of love and humanity and the Church as seen through the lens of the Catholic theology, okay? Maybe I'm explaining it in an imprecise way. My point being, a Pope can take a political stand, and maybe the Pope should, and it could be the wrong stand, and not violate the doctrine of infallibility. So Pope Francis was fair. He was supportive of Ukraine. And from what I understand, and priests tell me that there was a lot going to Ukraine that you didn't hear about. But he never, in my mind, I don't want to talk about him, okay? Because, R.I.P. It's not good to talk ill of the dead. He was a good man, and he was. The next Pope, I would like, in my fantasy, to look right in the camera and say, the war in Ukraine, yes, use the W word, not the conflict word, is because an aggressive dictator, a dark force in this universe has unjustly invaded a peaceful, transparent democracy. And they are wrong, and Ukraine has the right to defend themselves. No buts, ifs, however, that's it. So why do a lot of Catholics, have a kind of ambiguous or, unclear vision? And what does this mean for the Pope? Well, most of the Catholics I know are 100 or 110 supportive of Ukraine. Many archbishops, okay? I can just list them off. I can see Reinhold Marx. I see this Polish guy, he's Krajewski, okay? There's a Ukrainian bishop. He's a young guy, too. He's like born in 1980 from Ternopil. He's 110% for Ukraine. Many in the United States, all over. I remember this Catholic priest from Africa coming and just say, you guys, hold on, Ukraine's going to win this. He was just like, he sounds like me, okay? Yet my parish priest probably is like, in conservative, he's kind of like, he's not making any comments. He's got this, pray for our country, so some people, all people, 100% of the people are imperfect. And maybe they've been, propagandized to some extent. But that doesn't mean they're bad people. They just have views that are not aligned with truth and reality. And as I said, I'm a corrosive skeptic, and I'm aligned with empiricism and truth, because truth is the ultimate good for the individual. Justice, and I've gone over this, is the ultimate good for society as we make the world a better place. If you ever encounter somebody who's like spewing the Russian narrative, you can just ask them, first, do you agree that truth is the ultimate good? You can start that conversation that way, but that's another conversation. So this next pope, the ones that are the top contenders, they're kind of holding the party line. They don't want to offend anybody or anything. But is that what Christ taught? Wasn't he here to, separate the people the sheep from the wolves? Wasn't that his mission, to be just have the courage of your conviction and be clear? You saw what happened to him. A lot of this world now is one-dimensional. It's all about money, career, GDP growth, aggregate GDP growth. And I'm an economist, inflation rate. Oh no, we're not competing. We're not keeping. Is that what your life is about? Let's get back to these archetypes, and we're going to get back to the next pope. Think about when you were a child or a kid, female or male. Didn't you have this ideal? I hope most of you did, of this warrior, this spiritual warrior. Maybe it was more in vogue in the 60s and the 70s or the 90s or something. I think the 80s it got bleeped out a little bit. But this idea, like a brother Cadfael, Ellis Peters, if you know the book or the series, he was this humble monk collecting herbs and treating people with medicine, but then sometimes these soldiers would come into town and try to bully him around, and he'd flatten them because he was once a warrior. Okay, and they were surprised. Isn't this what real power is? It's not this grotesque, overt expressions and braggatry, but this silent working calmness. Isn't that the archetype, the spiritual warrior that we need to go back to? And if you've lost that connection, I would recommend you re-examine that connection, because you can make it. You can make your life like you were when you were a child. It's this, I know life shackles us with the bonds of excessive thought and bills and human adult problems. But we need more of these spiritual warriors. So if we can all visualize or hope or pray, whatever faith you come from, that the next pope is this spiritual warrior. Let's hope he comes from the outside and he can look the camera in the eye. I would take it a step further, and I can say this. My family was Russian Orthodox, or Orthodox. They were from Ukraine, but they were Orthodox. And they left. For the same reasons I'm about to state. It's a fake, artificial organization as it exists under the current patriarch in Moscow. There are good believers. There are good people in there. But from the top down, these demons need to be exorcised. And we as a world, I almost want to do a non-scientific experiment that everybody watching this visualize this change, this peaceful change. And I always tell people, don't get angry. Don't have hate in your heart towards anybody. Don't get fired up, because that's the dark side. That's what it thrives on. Remember, I think it was Luke fighting his father. The emperor was kind of egging him on. Use the dark side. Use the dark side. This is what makes you strong. He didn't care who won. Just like in Moscow, they don't, they give such conflicting messages. They don't care who wins, or they just want you to get your blood pressure up, your cortisol levels up, and fill your heart with negativity. Do the opposite. Fill your heart with love and visualize white flags all over Moscow. People coming out resisting, people saying, I'm a spiritual warrior. Let's see, so this next Pope, this Catholic Pope, this Roman Catholic Pope, let's hope he's that spiritual warrior. He's not afraid to take this geopolitical stance, because we saw the person, the writer, Nobel Prize winner who was in the concentration camp. He said, to be neutral, you're on the side of the aggressor. And that's not what the person who we celebrate this weekend was about. Any power we have on this earth comes not from us, but from a different source. So the spiritual warrior archetype, let's all visualize that something great will happen. And this next Pope, let's hope, even if he's from the party line, he can see the light, and he's bold and he's not afraid. And he is the spiritual warrior, not just this, bureaucratic pontiff. I can be a little bit critical of the Catholic Church. I'm a Catholic. I'm a lifelong member. Okay. I can state this, and I'm saying it with respect and all due respect. So the next Pope they're going to be voting on, and it looks like there's some, inside contenders that it looks like it'll just be maybe like, I think this Italian guy who's a kind of a moderate, and, he probably believes in the Fatima visions, that the consecration of Russia, they sprinkle some water, and I can make fun of him because that's not what it's about. And then everything's going to be hunky-dory. Sprinkling some water, and we've consecrated Russia. That is not what Fatima was about. It was about the authentic conversion of Russia. People walking the walk, putting their selves on the line to make the world a better place. So let's hope this next Pope takes that lead, and it would influence the people in Washington, because a lot of the people in Washington, like Rubio and, Vance, and even on the outside, like Carson, they are Roman Catholic. And it would indirectly influence the evangelicals and other Protestants and the Episcopals. It would be a ripple effect that would be a very positive force for this world injustice. And even if it doesn't go that way, I simply invite you to readdress the idea of the spiritual warrior and your stance towards Ukraine. Peace to all. My name is Mark Biernot. I'm a monetary economist. Have a beautiful day. Thank you very much.